for them in their bilateral relationship with China. This is one of those things that we agree to disagree on, I suppose you could say, between us and Kazakhstan, and we do talk openly about our view of the genocide that's gone on there, we leave it there. The one thing that I think we have noted, and it may seem inadequate or insufficient to you, is that there are some Uyghurs and also ethnic Kazakhs who are able to cross the border in a variety of ways. There have been, over the years, and who have essentially taken refuge. They don't necessarily have refugee status formally, but they've essentially taken refuge in Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan has lived up to its international obligations of non-refoulement. They do not send people back to China. So,
as with the Russian soldiers, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a positive. I mean, in our view, and maybe not easy for them in their relationship with China.
Thank you.
So next on my list, Ariel.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just listening to the previous question, thinking how you're a country of 20 million people, where the neighboring country senior politicians lay public claims to your territory, and you're going to provoke another neighbor that has 1.4 billion people and is a nuclear power. Just me, I'm sorry. Two questions, if I may. One on infrastructure. You already mentioned water shortages. There are issues with power. What can U.S. as a government and U.S. companies do to expedite the transition to 21st century blend of renewables and traditional energy to address the power deficit, which, by the way, is relevant to Uzbekistan as well, as we know. More broadly, going back to my previous comment on Russian politicians making ridiculous statements on Kazakhstan's territorial integrity, claiming it as Russian land somehow, whatever. As we probably are moving to a new stage in the war in Ukraine, do you see Russia intensifying its involvement in Central Asia, or they just don't have the bandwidth? How China features in that? We remember the important article by Comrade Xi Jinping about Kazakhstan territorial integrity. I think the message was received in Moscow, but you may have an interesting perspective. And just as a personal observation, I think we're lucky to have you in Pakistan. You are a very, very professional and impressive ambassador. I couldn't wish for that.
I feel like I should leave at this point. It's all downhill from here. It's only well, thank you, Ariel. So I think it was a two-part question about energy, and then about the kind of Russian irredentism or whatever, and all that stuff. On the energy, I wish I had a straightforward and kind of specific answer I could give you about all the things we could do to help them, fix their energy problems. I know that that one of the biggest short-term problems they have is that their system is so decrepit, and there's so much outdated equipment in there, especially in their power generation plants, that they have these they're going to have these recurring winter crises. And after last winter, when the Ekibastuz part of the system completely shut down for a week or something, when it was the coldest part of the winter, they vowed not to repeat that. And I know that they were intensively last summer and in the fall, because I remember meeting with the energy minister in September or something, right in the midst of this. They were plowing everything into fixing up everything and refurbishing and getting it ready. And they're still having breakdowns, and they're still having, power outages and heating outages and so on and so on. So unfortunately, I'm not sure there's much the U.S. per se can do to help with that short-term problem. We have companies that would be, if the government wants to contract with companies that could come in and help them, fix things. And there's also European companies and lots of other companies that can do this sort of thing. But fundamentally, it's about going forward, besides fixing the basic, connective infrastructure for their energy system. And that's not just about the power, it's modernizing the grid so it can use the renewable energy when it comes into the system. That is going to require, state investments. We can't substitute for those investments. Our private sector can be helpful in implementing, but they have to make the investments. And they also, I think one of the key things they need to be looking at is, the World Bank is ready and prepared to invest a lot more in energy modernization in Kazakhstan. And they've been stymied because the government will not provide the sovereign guarantee. Now, there's some financial or there's some policy aspect to this that I don't completely understand because I'm not an expert on these things. Marcia knows a lot more about this than I do, so she can probably explain it. But I know from talking to the World Bank reps in Kazakhstan that they're chomping at the bit to do more, and they've got resources.
Including thermal and nuclear, or only renewables?
Including thermal and renewables, not nuclear. I don't think they're interested in doing nuclear. But not coal, but other thermal. With
Russian gas is preferable, right?
Well, I don't know about the source of the gas, but gas, yeah. So anyway, that's that could be part of the solution. But there's no panacea, and it's certainly not coming from the United States. Although again, we're ready to help, and our USAID colleagues do have energy technical assistance program in place that could help on things like grid modernization. I'm sorry, I feel like these answers are taking up too much of the time here. But on the question about the sort of territorial, Russia's territorial designs and how Kazakhstan, reacts to that. You may recall that earlier in 2023, I don't remember exactly when it was. I think it was early in the year. There was this incident in Petropavlovsk, where a group of, I don't know how to describe them, a sort of a fringe group of people issued a declaration of autonomy, essentially. Like they said, we do not belong to the Republic of Kazakhstan anymore, and this is, we are declaring the, sovereign Republic of Petropavl or whatever. I don't know what they called it, but they, and at the time people thought maybe it was just a joke, and maybe it was more, not to be taken seriously, but the government of Kazakhstan took it very seriously. And just recently, after a long legal process, the leader of the group was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Another person got 7 years. They really took this down very quickly. So they take these things, as almost comical as they might seem to us, they take them very seriously. I do think that right now continues, and that implies, maybe Russia has a little more bandwidth to turn its attention to other things, possibly. I don't know. At the moment, I don't feel like that there's a sense of any imminent danger or threat to the northern border of Kazakhstan. But after, the February 2022 invasion, how can they not take it seriously? Right, as something that seriously have to prepare for from a national security point of view. So I think that's going to continue to be a reality that Kazakhstan deals with. There's always this issue about when statements are made in the Russian, like by some pundits in Moscow or on social media, or sometimes by members of the Duma, about historical lands that belong to us, or gifts of Lenin, I think is the term that they use. These are the gifts of Lenin. How seriously do you take that? Is that Kremlin policy? Is it, does it represent anything official, or is it just some people, fulminating? And again, I do think that while publicly the government of Kazakhstan is not going to be issuing statements rebutting or responding to all these things, that inside this matters. It really matters, and it creates a sense of insecurity and unease that they will continue to be dealing with.
Marcia, next.
Thank you, and Ambassador Rosenblum. Well, since the last time we met, I have joined the board of the Caspian Policy Center and on the advisory board, so I'm very pleased to see you here, and thank you for accommodating us all. You started by saying location, 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 and in my mind, Kazakhstan will be one of the big winners from this unintended consequence of Putin's war. Because of their location, they're sitting on the route between China and Europe, whether it's coming through the north or whether it's coming through the Caspian in the middle corridor. But recently, as a member of the EAEU, Kazakhstan has also now signed onto a free trade deal with Iran. There was an Astana Times article expounding on the wonderful benefits for Kazakhstan from this arrangement. How will it affect the geoeconomics of the region?
I don't have a really good answer to that, I have to admit, Marcia, how it will affect the geoeconomics. I guess what I'll say is that, there's a lot more talk I've noticed recently about developing the north-south corridor, which is not new, I realize,
right.
But that seems to have risen up again as a priority, and they're signing all these agreements about that, not just the thing with Iran, but sort of infrastructure that's related to the north-south development. And I guess from a very pragmatic Kazakh point of view, they have to look at all those alternatives, not just look at, but develop them. I mean, they see having an alternative to the northern route as essential to their future. And that includes going east to China, it includes going west to Azerbaijan and Europe, and it includes going south. I understand, and I guess I would say even respect the instinct they have to pursue these things as a landlocked country, etc. I will say that our Kazakh partners have come to us more than once since I've been there and asked some questions about trade with Iran and about oil swaps and various other things related to commodities going through Iran. Because they're just looking for every alternative. And those conversations don't last long because frankly, just where we sit right now, policy-wise, and in terms of sanctions, law, what's in law, and so on, there's no flexibility on that. So we don't get it. We don't even get into the details of it. It's like as soon as they raise it, I say, sorry, nothing's really changed, and we're not going to. Now, it's important for them to understand what's allowable and what isn't, and I think they do, or they're studying it more. But to look at our sanctions laws and understand what is sanctionable and what isn't. And for example, there's, as you probably know, there is a lot of trade already, especially like in grain, for example. There's grain loaded in the port of Aktau on Iranian ships that then bring grain to Iran. So. And there's other commodities as well. So that's going to continue, I'm sure. But that does not violate the sanctions, as far as I know. But there are other things that would. So
another thing to keep on your to-do list.
And may I make a quick footnote there, a historical footnote. The Eurasian Economic Union, this isn't very well known, but it was originally proposed by President Nazarbayev to Putin. And Putin brushed it off for a number of years. It was only when it was in Russia's interest that he picked up the idea again and then threw it out as a Russian idea. And it was slightly revised so that it was not only a Russian idea, but that it would benefit Russia the most of the members. So actually, this was once again a kind of reform movement by Kazakhstan very early in their independence, but it got sort of twisted around over history.
Turning to this side,
Yeah, I noticed you got a leftist
Left bias.
deviation there. I'll follow Eric's